You saucy minx. Hello everyone, I'm Sarah from Everyday Starlet. Welcome to my channel. I make videos to inspire you to be the star of your own life. I'm continuing my Masculine Feminine Energies film breakdown series, Holiday Edition, with a modern classic, Love Actually. If you're not familiar with what I mean by masculine and feminine energies, I talk about this in most of my videos, but a brief summary. Masculine and feminine energies are energies that live within all of us. We all contain both energies. We all have a core energy. This is the one we're most ourselves in. That energy often links up with our gender. It doesn't have to, but it very often does. And we can be in wounded or healed versions of either of these energies. Each of these energies contains archetypes, and we all contain all of the archetypes that we can tap into whenever we need to. I have a lot of videos about the masculine and the feminine archetypes. And in order to have sexual polarity in a relationship, you need one partner to be in the masculine and one partner to be in the feminine. These opposite energies attract sexually and same energies repel sexually. So let's get into Love Actually. I actually have a little confession to make. I watched this movie for the first time last holiday season. It was actually recommended to me because I had just started doing these film breakdowns, and I watched the movie, but I didn't have enough time to do a film breakdown of it before Christmas time. So this is only the second time I've ever seen this movie. I know it's an iconic modern day movie, and to be honest with you, I find it kind of confusing. I do think this movie is very feminine in nature, in the fact that it's very chaotic. It's all over the place. It's not necessarily... It is a linear story, but it jumps from one story to another, so it's got a very chaotic aspect to it, which for the feminine is actually very normal. To have that chaos, the masculine needs simplicity. So my inner feminine should love this, but I have to admit, because I'm much more used to classic movies, older Hollywood movies and things like that, I do know that this trend of having a whole bunch of different storylines that are all kind of intertwined in some way was very common in the 2000s. Not my personal preference because I'm not as used to it. However, I'm getting used to it, and after seeing it for the second time to do this breakdown, I follow it a little bit more. There are also a ton of different characters, storylines, things going on. I'm going to try to touch on most of them, but I want to focus most of my time in this video on the ones that I actually think have the most masculine feminine polarity lessons in them. I can't really dive deep into all of the different relationships in this movie because there's just way too many in this video. It would be way too long. I'm going to start with my favorite couple in this movie. I don't think I can fully emphasize how much I love this couple, and that is David and Natalie. David is the prime minister. He's a brand new prime minister in England, and he is, you know, learning his job, learning his role, and he is somebody, they've referenced that he is like married to his job. He's a bachelor, seems to be very content with being a bachelor, not because he's a playboy, but because he's dedicated his life to his political pursuits. That's very masculine. A lot of people, when they think of like a masculine bachelor, so to speak, they think of him as being someone who's like just playing the field and needs to have a lot of different women. A truly masculine man will dedicate himself to a greater purpose. And if he is single, it's usually because he has not found a partner yet who really is in the best support of his greater purpose. Because the masculine is not about just, you know, finding a lot of different women. He's about his greater purpose in life. And that's clearly what David is doing. He really has this bigger purpose, but you don't get the impression that he is very lecherous or flirting with a lot of women. He's very focused on his career. He meets Natalie on his first day. She's part of his staff, and right from their very initial interaction, she is so feminine and he is so mesmerized by her. She's so playful. She's so fun. She's a little bit nervous meeting him, but she just has this vibrant energy around her. Yes, it's youthful, but it's a mature youthful. I mean, she, you know, has a very prestigious job. She does her job very well. She acts very professionally, but yet she also has that fun, playful aspect to her. I adore Natalie so much. I can't even express to you. And the two of them together are just so fun, and you can tell that he is so enamored with her from the minute that he sees her. Also though, even though he kind of can't stop noticing her, he goes into his office, he's alone, and you can see the frustration in his face. The masculine does not like a distraction from his greater purpose. And the most distracting thing to the masculine is the feminine. So when the masculine finds a feminine partner, it doesn't necessarily have to be a feminine woman. I mean, the masculine can be lured away by the feminine in nature. You know, it can be lured away by a beautiful sunset. It can be lured away by the ocean. How many men get distracted from their purpose because they go off surfing and stuff? That's literally him actually like dancing with the feminine in the ocean. Like the masculine can very easily get distracted by really enticing, radiant feminine energy. And David realizes this. He realizes that he has now completely been distracted by Natalie's feminine energy, and he knows that that is going to be a distraction for him. And as much as he is attracted to that distraction and over time develops a great love for that distraction, it's still a distraction, and it's worrisome to him. And the masculine often, if he has found a greater purpose in life, if he has a direction, he has a purpose, he will find anything that is not on that purpose to be distracting, and that ruins his freedom, because the masculine longs for freedom, but it's not the freedom that I think many men kind of settle for, which is just the freedom to go where he wants, do what he wants, the freedom to sleep with as many women as he wants, those kind of things. Like, that's not real freedom, because that's usually him being addicted to some kind of short-term gratification, or him just being addicted to not finding a direction or purpose. When a true masculine man finds his greater purpose, which is really when he usually steps into his masculine, he's going to need a partner who's in the most support of that greater purpose. But he's going to find any kind of relationship, particularly one that's very polarizing with the feminine, to be somewhat constraining, because the feminine is now going to require something from him. And that's usually when the masculine can become concerned, because the masculine is always going to prioritize his greater purpose. That's usually, I think, the elusive pull away. You know, when we get men who start getting really involved with a woman and they kind of pull back a little bit, like they kind of have that moment of fear. And that's what David is doing just from their initial meeting. He's got that like, uh-oh, like I see possibly my freedom to fully pursue my purpose and my focus and direction that has solely been on my career. Like I'm being pulled away from that a little bit, and that's gonna worry the masculine. So that's a real inner struggle, and David is such a masculine character. Like he's got some playfulness, like he likes to joke around, he's very personable, like he actually dances around at one point when he thinks he's alone. He has a great connection to his feminine energy, but he is a very masculine character, and that's the ideal. I mean, you don't necessarily want a man who is solely embodying his masculine so much that he doesn't have any connection to his inner feminine, so he can actually have love, compassion, and empathy, and, you know, just be able to kind of have emotions and things like that. But you want a man who fully embodies his masculine but also has a connection to his feminine when he needs to. So the interactions with David and Natalie actually kind of grow. David starts trying to get to know Natalie a little bit more, and, you know, Natalie is always just so fun and playful around him, and she tries to stay serious, but she kind of cracks because she's just not a serious person. She is just so fun and playful, and every time they have interactions, David always ends up feeling really stressed out, because again, he's realizing that he's falling for her, and he's afraid of that. He's afraid that that's going to take him off purpose. Now, there's a really amazing shift that happens. So David, as the new prime minister, is scheduled to meet with the President of the United States to have this visit. The President is visiting him, so they have this meeting, and David's kind of been like, oh no, I just want us to, you know, keep the peace, and he's kind of being more passive, and people are being a little frustrated that he's this new prime minister and that he's going to try to play it safe and play it kind of more passive. He meets the President, who's played by Billy Bob Thornton. They have this interaction, and the President is kind of a sleazeball. Art imitating life, life imitating art. I don't know. Anyway, the President's kind of a sleazeball. You find out that the President kind of makes a move on Natalie and makes her very uncomfortable. And in that moment, David has a shift. They have this press conference, and David is all riled up. David's in protector mode right now. His masculine has gone from just focus and direction to, okay, he needs to protect the feminine. So he now stands up to the President in this press conference, and actually, like, in a very grounded way. I mean, he's not attacking him. He just literally is like, you know, we're gonna stand our ground, and he gets everybody excited, and everybody's so happy that he's actually stepping up, and it shifts him from being that kind of passive, I don't want to stir things up, to that protector of not just Natalie, but of his whole country, which is really his job. That's the thing that I think a lot of masculine men, they fear the distraction of the feminine. but the right feminine partner is in support of the masculine's greater purpose and will actually inspire him to live his purpose even deeper. So if he is, say, if his purpose is his job, is his work, when he teams with the right feminine partner, he will usually find an amazing increase. I can't tell you how many times I've seen or heard of situations where when a man meets the right woman, like she comes into his life and his income will like double overnight. I've experienced that in a past relationship. I've talked to so many women who say that, like they come into a man's life and his abundance or his achievements or his purpose, it grows so much greater because the right feminine partner in a masculine man's life will inspire him to step up. And that's really, like, Natalie didn't do that on purpose. In fact, she was very uncomfortable with the situation, but her presence in David's life actually inspired him to step up and really do his job that much greater. Fortunately, David panics at that point. He's still really afraid of the situation, so he actually asks that Natalie be like redistributed so he's not seeing her every day because he's so afraid of her being a distraction, which she's not. Like, she literally has inspired him to step up to be greater than what he would have been on his own. He just needs to see that. He eventually actually finds a Christmas card from her where she basically, you know, has this beautiful message and subtly confesses her attraction to him, and he basically goes on this quest to find her. The masculine will pursue the feminine that he wants. When he realizes that the feminine is who he wants, he will pursue her. He will go to any lengths. Like, you see women all the time, well, maybe he lost my number, maybe he did this. If the masculine wants to find you, he will find you. He will pursue you. He is the hunter. The masculine is the hunter. And David goes out of his way. He's just knocking on random doors, like as the prime minister, trying to find Natalie. He finds Natalie. They have this moment where they're all over the place, and Natalie is kind of like, you know, sort of pulling him off in secret. She's in her feminine. She's so flowy. He's just so structured, and the two of them just have this amazing chemistry. They end up kissing in front of like a whole auditorium full of people. It's just really adorable, but the two of them have such amazing chemistry. And then you kind of see at the end of the movie, spoiler alert, like he's coming back from a trip at the airport. She greets him at the airport, and oh my god, that moment where she runs and jumps into his arms is so feminine. I can't even explain it. Like, he is the masculine tree and she is the feminine who just like literally leaps into his arms and he catches her, and it's just that combination of like the feminine excitement and his like grounded stability. The two of them and their masculine feminine dynamics, I love them as a couple. And now this was an early 2000s movie, so I have to say it's pretty triggering, the fact that they constantly harp on Natalie's weight. She's gorgeous. Most women would kill to have her figure, let's be real. But this was the early 2000s, so basically if a woman had anything other than zero body fat, she was considered overweight. So they're constantly making jabs at her being chubby or plumpy, or like always these jabs about her weight, which I have to admit, if you're somebody who's dealt with weight issues or, you know, body image, body dysmorphia, which is most women, it can be very triggering. But I have to say, the fact that the woman that was called like chubby or plump throughout the whole movie ended up in the best relationship with the best quality man, I gotta say that gave me a lot of satisfaction. So that made the movie for me. These two made the movie for me. I absolutely adore them. I cannot emphasize that enough. They are so like masculine feminine dynamics right there. They are an amazing model to use when you're looking at like those energies. Now let's look at what not to do. The Harry, Karen, and Mia situation. That whole thing is heartbreaking. It absolutely is. Harry and Karen are a married couple. They have 2 kids. You get the impression they've been married for quite a while, and Mia is essentially Harry's like secretary assistant. She is basically seducing Harry. I mean, she is absolutely throwing herself at him. She's seducing him. She's doing everything she can to get Harry's attention and to kind of lure Harry away from his marriage. Before we get into this, I want to say, first of all, if a woman can lure a man away from his marriage, he's choosing to leave his marriage. Like, it's on him, and infidelity is always the fault of the person who cheats. 100% I believe that. It is always the fault of the person who cheats. The quality of the relationship is determined by the 2 people in the relationship. So the fact that their marriage was not the strongest is on both of them. The decision to be unfaithful is always on the person who cheats. Plain and simple. And I'm not justifying infidelity, so I don't want anything I say to be misconstrued as that. I just want to explore some of the energies as to what led them to be in this scenario. Karen admits several times that she is sort of cold. I think if you think about it, that's really a limiting belief that she has within herself. She believes she's cold. She believes she's emotionless. She's got all these judgments. She's actually very self-critical. She puts herself down a lot, which usually is a very big sign that she's disconnected from her healthy feminine energy. She's in a little bit more wounded feminine energy. That's usually what you see when you see people actually constantly criticizing themselves, is you get a lot of wounding in your feminine energy. Wounded feminine energy is very self-abusive. She also is got a lot of jabs at Harry as well, which is usually a sign that she's got some wounded masculine energy. She'll have little jabs like that she, you know, doesn't expect much from him or things like that. Like she has little jabs here and there that are kind of deteriorating the relationship. Now those jabs are often a symbol of a deeper need in the relationship. However, that's not the ideal way to express those deeper needs. Like if she wants her husband to buy her a more romantic Christmas present, just kind of jabbing at him like, well, I don't expect much from you or things like that, not going to inspire him to want to give her a more romantic Christmas present. If she wants that, she's going to have to kind of inspire him. Now, in the end, he actually kind of does that, but we'll get into the gift in a minute. But what's happening, Mia is seducing Harry and he's getting this sexual energy from Mia that he's not getting from his wife. Very often, a man will be enticed by the feminine energy that he's not getting from his partner. Anytime there is a feminine energy, an aspect of feminine energy, a flavor of feminine energy that a man isn't getting from his feminine partner, he's gonna start to crave that in other places. It doesn't necessarily have to be other women, but other women is a very common way to do that. I actually have a lot of videos about this topic, so I'm not gonna dive into that too much, but he's getting the sexual energy from Mia he's not getting from his wife. Now, if he needs something more from his wife, it's important for him to communicate that with her. And that's why being in a relationship, having that communication of being able to ask for what your needs are and being able to communicate what your needs are, those are really important in order for the relationship to maintain, because when you don't, you just continue to not get what you need, and that's when people start trying to look for that in other areas. Not justifying infidelity, but just saying that that is a common thing. It's not necessarily just infidelity. I mean, sometimes it comes from somebody searching for that in, you know, just in their work, or, you know, some kind of addiction or something like that. It's very often that if people aren't getting something in a relationship that they need, that they're gonna search for in other areas. So Mia's got all this sexual energy and she's very blatantly open to receive from Harry. Like she's making it very, very obvious that she's open and receptive to him. I would argue she's doing it because she wants to get something from him. And let's be real, Harry is gonna give to her because he's looking to get something from her. Their relationship is not based on, you know, love. Their relationship is based on a you know, a transactional type of situation. Masculine feminine relationships can be somewhat transactional on a superficial level. That's just surface stuff. I mean, just anybody can do that. Anybody can give money and give sex and this and that. Like, that's just a superficial thing. It doesn't necessarily mean that there's something deeper there. In true masculine feminine dynamics, you're giving and receiving with the released attachment from expecting something in return. Now that said, if you're only giving and you never get any energy back, or you're only receiving and you're never actually giving any energy, the relationships are gonna feel lopsided. However, the feminine is always gonna wanna be more open and receptive. The masculine is always gonna be more giving. That's just the way that the dynamics work. But Karen is so closed off because she's so critical of herself. She's critical of her husband. She's just got so many walls up that are blocking her from true intimacy. So her husband then goes looking for that intimacy, so to speak, in another woman who is literally opening to him. So Mia kind of entices Harry into buying her this very expensive necklace. Karen finds the necklace and assumes that it's for her, because why would her husband have an expensive necklace that he was wrapping up to give as a Christmas present if it wasn't for his wife, right? So then Christmas comes, she opens the box that she thinks is the necklace, and it turns out that it is a Joni Mitchell CD. Now, in reality, she had mentioned her love of Joni Mitchell. Her husband actually did give her a gift that he believed was something she really wanted. It just wasn't the necklace. I really do believe that if she had gotten the CD and didn't know about the necklace at all, she probably would have been thrilled by a gift that was actually very personal. However, because she knew about the necklace, she knew that the necklace wasn't for her. That's where the emotions came up. But she hides them. Now granted, she's in front of her kids, so sometimes showing these polarities and these emotions in front of your kids can be a gray area. But Karen even admits she's very closed off from her emotions, so she excuses herself. She goes in the bedroom and she cries. It's so heartbreaking because she obviously doesn't feel like she can show her husband that level of vulnerability. That vulnerability may very well have brought them closer together. Now, obviously, she realizes that he's obviously been unfaithful, and she does actually suspect something's going on with Mia because she warns him to be careful. Notice when she warns him to be careful, it's from a very directional place. It's from a very masculine place of her telling him what to do. It's not her showing her genuine vulnerability and concern that there might be something going on with Mia, which showing that feminine vulnerability may have brought out his masculine energy and may have, again, I'm not putting this on her, but it may have strengthened their relationship. She actually ends up confronting Harry. It's in an awkward situation. It's after their kids' like musical performance, so there's a lot of other people around, and she kind of confronts him. She starts to show her vulnerability to him. Of course, he admits that he was wrong, but she's always like, you know, shifting out of that emotion to like smile at somebody, to wave, to kind of put on that show. She's still stopping herself from showing him her true vulnerability. No justification for him actually being unfaithful at all. However, if as a woman you can't show that beautiful feminine emotion and vulnerability, it's going to be really difficult for you to have a relationship with anyone. And even if she does decide not to stay with him, her next relationship is probably going to go in a similar way because she's not going to be able to fully tap into her feminine energy and express her emotions. She's still going to stay in that more guarded energy. She got a lot of wounding in her feminine, which is why she's so hard on herself. She's got a lot of wounding in her masculine, which is why she kind of seems to be telling her husband what to do. That's very common, I think, especially when people become parents. So she feels like she has to run the show and run everything. It's a very common dynamic for couples to get in, but it's really important that as a woman, especially if you're in your feminine, and she clearly is, because she has those emotions that bubble up. She's just not letting herself show them. She's not comfortable showing them. If you can't actually show that vulnerability with your partner, you have a really difficult time actually having a healthy, intimate relationship. So not justifying anything that Harry did. The fact that he was unfaithful is absolutely on him, and there's no excuse for that. That said, the health of their relationship and him not being able to communicate with her that he needed more from her. You know, he was kind of acting like, oh, you're fine, everything's wonderful. He clearly was looking for something else, and he couldn't go to his partner and say, hey, I need more sexual energy from you, or I need you to be more open to me, or something like that. You know, she couldn't go to him and actually say, hey, I feel like we're in a rut, or I feel like I'm taking on too much, or whatever it was that she was feeling. She wasn't able to express that to him. So they were just sort of living this life. They weren't actually communicating with each other what their needs were, and he just happened to be the one who looked for it somewhere else. And not justifying that at all, but the health of their actual relationship is really on both of them, and I think that that's an important thing to remember. Don't justify infidelity, but you know, if you really need to work on your relationships in order to keep them strong. And at the very end of the movie, which is like 1 month later, Harry and Karen see each other. You don't really know exactly what their arrangement has been, but they obviously haven't seen each other in a little while, and Harry asks her how she's doing, and she keeps saying, I'm fine. I'm fine. When a woman says she's fine, she's not fine. Women are never fine. Fine is an indication that she's suppressing something. When women say they're fine, they're usually suppressing it. And Karen still hasn't learned how to express what she's feeling with him. And until she learns to do that, she's gonna have a problem in all of her future relationships. So those were the main relationship dynamics that I really wanted to break down in this movie. I'll just make a note about few of the other character storylines going on. There's the Peter, Juliet, Mark thing, which I think is kind of iconic because of Mark showing up and showing Juliet the cards where it's like, you know, to me you're perfect, and those things like that's kind of that iconic moment. He's in love with his best friend's wife. And the fact that she kisses him, and I get that it's a romantic movie. It's crossing a line though, I think, on both of their parts. I mean, I think it's really, really unfair to Peter in that whole situation. And the fact that Mark is really obsessed with this woman that he can't have. And it's kind of implied, I think, that he's a photographer, that he spends a lot of time with models and things like that. They don't dig into his character too much, but he seems like he's the classic guy who wants what he can't have and is going to become obsessed with what he can't have. I don't know, that dynamic with the three of them, I think, is probably gonna be problematic, but you know, that is what it is. Jamie and Aurelia, I think is how you say her name. Jamie ends up finding out that his, I'm assuming girlfriend, I don't think they were actually married, was cheating on him with his brother. So he ends up kind of going off in seclusion. That's a very masculine way of handling things, going off into seclusion. He's a writer. You get the impression that's what he usually does as a pattern, but going off into seclusion when you need to reevaluate your life, that's very, very common, and most masculine men need that time in seclusion to refocus their life when they feel like they're going through a big life change. Aurelia is kind of like, is supposed to be like a housekeeper, so to speak. She only speaks Portuguese, and of course he only speaks English and some broken other languages. The thing about their dynamic that I really, really love is I feel like it is symbolic of the idea that the masculine and the feminine really are speaking different languages. Even when we're both speaking the same like physical language, like if it's both English or it's both Portuguese or it's both Italian or whatever, the masculine and feminine still communicate very differently. So it can feel sometimes like men and women, even when you're speaking the same language, are actually speaking different languages. And the fact that the two of them develop this love for each other when they're speaking different languages, I think is very symbolic of the idea that men and women often are speaking different languages, but they learn how to communicate, and they're learning how to communicate with each other through body language and energies and things, and they really develop this love for each other. I mean, I do think that if two people can't actually speak the same language, you're gonna have long-term issues and barriers and stuff. So I'm not saying that it's ideal that two people don't speak the same language, but it does give them this opportunity to really learn how to communicate through body language and things like that. And they really develop this love for each other. And then the fact that Jamie decides to go off and find her and propose to her because he realizes how much he misses her and wants her in his life. He has spent this time learning Portuguese so he can speak to her. And when he finds her, he realizes that she has been learning English so she can communicate with him. And I just thought that was really symbolic of the idea that even though men and women are kind of speaking different languages, if we learn, even if just it's in broken English or so to speak, like if you learn how to communicate the way that the opposite energy communicates, you can come together, right? Like if women learn more about how men communicate, so they can communicate with men more like a man would need them to communicate, whereas if men learn how women communicate, so they have a better time communicating with women the way that they understand, we would have a lot healthier relationships. I really do believe that. So that's not exactly what the message of this couple was, but I thought it was kind of symbolic of that. It's like men and women really are speaking different languages, and if we can kind of each learn each other's languages a little bit, we come together and we just communicate so much better. I actually have a masterclass for women on how to communicate from your feminine energy with a masculine partner, so if you want to check that out, details in the description box below. Shameless plug. Colin. I don't love the Colin storyline. It obviously was for humor's sake, and I imagine probably like a man with a British accent could probably go to a bar in the United States and get a little bit more attention because it's got that sort of exotic feel to it. But the idea that he's gonna show up and all of a sudden have like a foursome with, you know, 4 gorgeous women, you know, no, that's not really that realistic, right? Colin is your typical like wounded feminine male who is convinced that women are the problem because he has a lot of wounding and judgment against women. He thinks he's a god. He literally calls himself a sex god. Even though he's horrible at speaking to women, he's incredibly misogynistic. He makes women massively uncomfortable and doesn't seem to care at all that he's making women uncomfortable. Like his interactions with women are the creepy kind. I hear men say all the time that like, well, if a woman calls a man creepy, it's just because she's not attracted to him. No, what Colin does when he interacts with women, that's creepy on any guy. Like it's creepy. Like that behavior is, he's creepy when he talks to women. Then he blames women for the fact that he hasn't actually taken the time to learn how women communicate and how women would like to be approached, how women would like to be spoken to. He just assumes it's got to be women's fault. How many guys on the internet fit that description, right? It's always women's fault, and he just needs to go someplace else where women are better than where they currently are, just because he doesn't want to acknowledge. And his friend is even like, his buddy, his friend there is literally calling him out like, no, you're an asshole, like that's why women don't like you. And it's like when you have a masculine friend as a man who's trying to call you out and be like, hey, you know, it's not them, it's you. Guys, you probably should listen to that friend because he wants to help you, right? Like that's one of the great things I think about men having a brotherhood, is having a man who will call you out and be like, dude, it's not them, it's you. It's a big part of Jordan Peterson's message as well, you know? I mean, that idea of like, if no women want you, they're not wrong. You know what I mean? Like, improve yourself. But Colin doesn't want to improve himself. He just wants to be like, oh, I have a sexy British accent, I'm just gonna go to America and I'll meet a bunch of women. And of course, because it's a movie, he does. But in reality, I think if you as a person, again, are saying that like it's all, and this goes for men or women, if you're like, oh, it's all the other gender's fault and I just need to go someplace else, passport husbands, I just need to go someplace else where the women, say for example, are more agreeable or something, you're only accepting that you're the weakness, right? Like, you're the weak link. If you feel like you need to go off and, don't even get me started on passport husbands, because it's human trafficking. I'm sorry, it is. I'm not going to get into that, but it is. And it work on yourself. Like, for anyone, men or women, if you're not in the situation that you feel like you need to be, no shame, no judgment. We've all been in places that aren't the ideal places for us to be in, but work on yourself. All I'll say about that. Daniel and Sam is such a sweet dynamic that they have. Daniel is widowed and he basically is a stepdad to his late wife's son, Sam, who's adorable. I'm not going to touch on that too much as far as masculine feminine dynamics, but I will say that Daniel does an amazing job of stepping into his grounded leadership with Sam when Sam needs that. He does a really great job of stepping into the father role or the parenting role. You know, he still has feminine emotions. He has a connection to his feminine energy. He's loving and nurturing with Sam. That said, he knows when to tap into that masculine safety and structure and security when Sam needs it. He does a really great job of that, and I think that character is really great for showing how, you know, as a single father, for example, which you don't see a lot in the media, how he manages to stay grounded and also have a connection to his emotions and things like that, and actually be a father figure as well. So I think Daniel does a pretty good job of that in this movie. Oh, Sarah in this movie. Oh my God. That storyline breaks my heart. I could just cry. And I mean, she has a crush on Carl. I get really pissed off in the beginning when people are trying to convince her to ask Carl out, because I'm very much against that. I don't think that you should, as a woman, do not pursue the masculine, let the masculine pursue you. And Carl ends up doing that. He ends up kind of making the move. Sarah's storyline just breaks my heart because she is constantly getting phone calls, and you find out it's because she has a brother who has serious mental illness, and she really has to be on call to take care of him all the time. I'm torn with this because in reality, Sarah's character has to be the masculine structure for her brother. She's been put in that role. She's also got a lot of feminine wounding in the sense that she really cannot create structure and boundaries around that situation so she's able to have a life of her own. That situation is very difficult in order to set boundaries around, especially when it becomes fully your responsibility. It's not something we talk about a ton because we do focus a lot on, you know, women who are single mothers and how they have to kind of find that balance between sometimes they have to be the masculine and sometimes they can be in their feminine, and it's important to find that balance. However, with children, as children grow up and as children grow older, they become more and more independent. So as a parent, obviously when children are little, you have to be, you know, there all the time. Whereas as children grow and they start developing a little bit more independence, obviously it's important as a parent that you be there for them. But that said, your responsibility of constantly being on top of them gets less and less as they grow. However, when you are the caretaker to someone, you know, likely a family member of some kind, if they have physical ailments, that's difficult. It's incredibly difficult. And I don't like to get into who has it better, who has it worse, or anything. When it's physical ailments, it's incredibly difficult. When it's mental health challenges, it's a whole other layer to that situation. And as someone who identifies with this character probably too much, when you are a caretaker to someone with mental health challenges, it can fully consume your life. It can be very paralyzing to you because you really feel limited, and it's very difficult to set boundaries even when you know that you need to, because the circumstances are such. Boundaries are not always understood, you know what I mean? Like in the situation with Sarah in this movie, you know, she can tell her brother what to do, but sometimes he just goes on a rampage and starts swinging, right? Like she can't, when you're dealing with somebody with mental illness, you can set boundaries, but they don't always understand them. And that's something that I've experienced personally. And I'm not going to dig into that too much because I don't really even know necessarily how to advise you to navigate it, because I know it's something I've struggled with navigating a lot. So I'm just gonna say this: if you are someone who is in a position where you have to be a caregiver to someone of any kind, but especially if you're having to be a caregiver to somebody with mental health challenges, please know that you're not alone. Please know that there are other people going through the same thing. I know it can be isolating. I know it can be scary, and it can be really, it can be difficult. Please know that you're not alone, and that I see you and other people see you. So yeah, that storyline, it was tough. It hit me hard. I will say though, the fact that Carl kind of walked away from it, I understand, you know, him feeling like he obviously was never going to be a priority to Sarah because she had too many other commitments to her brother. However, that's her situation, that's her life. And if he's not strong enough to handle having to share her with something that she needs to do, or at least is not willing to step in and try to help her figure out how to make it work, he's probably just not the man for her. And Carl seems like a perfectly nice guy and everything. We don't really dive into his character too deeply in the movie or anything, but you know, if it's just not something that he really wants to be a part of or accept into his life, that's fine. Just means that they're probably not the right match for each other. So all I wanted to say about that. So like this movie, again, there's a lot of stuff going on in this movie, a lot of characters I probably didn't even get to. I just wanted to touch on some of them. David and Natalie, love them, love them, love them. The Harry, Karen, and Mia situation, we can learn a lot from them and what not to do. So after you watch this video, I highly recommend that you watch this movie, whether you've seen it or not. Maybe this is on your list of holiday movies that you watch. See if you can pick up on some of the things that I mentioned. If you enjoyed this video and found it helpful, please give it a big thumbs up and be sure you subscribe to my channel. If you have any thoughts on this movie, my breakdown, let me know. Leave a comment in the comment section below. I'd love to hear from you. If you're a woman and you want to connect to your feminine energy, I have online courses, details in the description box below, along with links to all my social media accounts. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope you join me next time.